When I look at J.J. McCarthy, who clearly struggled with his footwork and balance in the pocket at Michigan, what I look for is to see if he's gotten better in that area. Because for him to be a quality NFL starter, he's going to need to do that better. And by the way, he was much, much better at that. And I give a ton of credit to Kevin O'Connell and his coaching staff. And I spoke to people in Minnesota, and that's one thing they really focused on through OTAs and obviously through training camp was his footwork and balance in the pocket.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Wisdom Wednesday, presented, of course, by DraftKings. Just use the code Ross, whether you're over on the Best Ball app, the DFS app, DraftKings app, or the DK Sportsbook app. They got goodies for you either place using the code Ross. I am Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years, back in the booth again tomorrow night as the Patriots host the Eagles in preseason week 2 action. They had a joint practice yesterday. It's interesting, by the way, Patriots typically have pretty darn good press box food. They have these like gigantic peanut butter chocolate cookies that are my favorite. I've never been there without them having New England clam chowder. Get yourself some chowder. The only thing is, I've never really been up there in August when it's hot. I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about the chowder in the heat. I'm not sure how you guys are going to feel. You're going to be thrown for a little bit of a loop here. The wisdom today is coming from none other than Greg Cosell, because I've got travel this week with the game. Greg has travel this week. So we'll have another special guest on tomorrow's Ross Tucker Football Podcast. But we like to change it up. You can't only listen or watch youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL to Thursdays, because you never know when Greg will be here on a Wednesday or Monday or Tuesday or whatever. Got to hear and listen to what Greg's thought about some of the rookie quarterbacks that took the field in an NFL uniform for the first time this past weekend. Shout out to our latest patron, patreon.com/RT Media. Remember, you get access to the private Slack channel for all the other listeners like you, which is cool just to be part of the community, but also to see the even money bets in black and white, which is pretty awesome. You know who else is awesome? Greg Cosell. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Okay, Greg, you don't need to say it. I'll say it for you. It's preseason. We're not going to get too carried away. Although I do think it's important to note, Greg, 2 things in preseason. You correct me if you think I'm wrong. Number 1, the defenses are typically going to be more vanilla. And number 2, the coaches are going to go out of their way to try to put these young quarterbacks in a position to succeed, especially the first couple snaps, get them in a rhythm, get them some confidence. But what I would say to that, Greg, is shouldn't they always be doing that? I mean, shouldn't you always be trying to put your young quarterback in a position to succeed?
Well, first of all, that is true. You're 100% right. That's true even in the regular season. The way I look at preseason when I watch the quarterbacks, Ross, is if they do something we know they can do, that their college tape indicates that is a strength of their game, and then they show that, I don't view that as a, oh my God, look what he did, because we know he can do that. In other words, when Caleb Williams rolls out to his right and throws the ball to Kmet for 26 yards, to me, I don't look at that and go, oh my God, wow, look at what Caleb Williams did. We know he can do that. That's not what you're looking for when you watch Caleb Williams in the preseason. When I look at J.J. McCarthy, who clearly struggled with his footwork and balance in the pocket at Michigan, what I look for is to see if he's gotten better in that area. Because for him to be a quality NFL starter, he's going to need to do that better. And by the way, he was much, much better at that. And I give a ton of credit to Kevin O'Connell and his coaching staff. And I spoke to people in Minnesota, and that's one thing they really focused on through OTAs and obviously through training camp was his footwork and balance in the pocket. So you look for things that they need to improve. You don't look for what you know they can do because they You've seen that already. So they're likely to be able to do that because they've played that way their whole lives. So I look at the preseason with a quarterback more that way.
And I think that that's fair, Greg. I will say this. Isn't it funny how, and I know he showed it in college, but it's still, you want to see if it looks the same, I feel like, or, looks the same at this level. I don't know how some of these guys do it, including Caleb Williams, with that throw on the run like that. I mean, obviously they practice it all the time, Greg, but I remember even in the backyard, right? It is not easy to throw the ball on the run like that with that type of velocity and accuracy. I mean, let's put it this way. I can see why people got excited about it, Greg.
Without question. But I think, Ross, being honest, we kind of knew that that was in his game. That's one of the reasons he was the number one pick in the draft. To me, I look at his first drop back on 3rd and 12. It was his first drop back in the game. I look at that play as more reflective of what you hope to see, because on that particular play, he showed the ability to work through his progression from right to left with patience and poise in the pocket, and then driving a strike to more on the curl route on the backside of his read. To me, I look at a play like that and say, hey, that's really good. That's what you want to see from Caleb Williams. Yes, the throw to Kmet is a big-time throw. We know that. But that's why he's a number one pick, because he does have special throwing talent and can make those kinds of throws on the move.
Greg, this is why we have to do this. Just so everybody knows, watching preseason tape is not necessarily Greg's favorite thing to do because, Greg, you at this point, what you really like is you like the chess match, you like the scheme, you like the scheme stuff, and there's not a lot of new scheme stuff in the preseason. But to hear you break that down, that 3rd and 12, I didn't see that. I just saw the highlights, and the only highlights they showed was when he moved around and then did the shovel pass to DeAndre Swift, and then the throw to Kmet. I don't even know if I saw the play that you just talked about. So,
well, it's funny. I'll say this about J.J. McCarthy. His first drop back, he showed 2 strong positive traits: progression reading and pocket movement. The initial read was a 2-man high-low concept to the boundary, okay? That was not defined. So McCarthy then climbed the pocket comfortably, stayed on balance, and he hit his receiver on the backside dig away from the primary read. That's excellent quarterbacking. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for, as opposed to, oh, wow, he just made a good throw. I mean, these guys are first-round picks. They're going to make good throws. I thought that what the Vikings clearly wanted to work on with McCarthy was the play-action pass game under center. Now, obviously, he did that at Michigan because they were a running football team as well. But little things, to me, are really important. Like when I watched him in the play-action pass game, what do you have to do in the play-action pass game, Ross, when you turn your back to the defense? You've got to snap your head around. We always used to talk about that with Peyton Manning. And by the way, I don't want people to think I'm comparing J.J. McCarthy to Peyton Manning. I'm just making a tactical coaching point that's something that you look for when you watch quarterbacks with under center play action. Do they snap their head around immediately? Because the picture changes when you turn your back to the defense, and you've got to snap your head around and pick up whatever you're taught is your read going to be. And I thought McCarthy did a really good job with that.
The similarity for that from an offensive lineman perspective, Greg, the way we used to do silent count, okay, would be the center would look between his legs at the quarterback would lift his leg, and you'd come up 1,001 go. Well, what happens is the defense used to totally move where they were when you would put your head between your legs and when you weren't looking. And so you'd put your head up and it'd be a totally different picture. They would have totally changed the picture, which is why they changed it, and now the guard looks back and then just points forward. So the center can keep looking at what's happening and doesn't have to come up and see something totally different when they move, when he puts his head between his legs.
Yeah, so, I mean, the picture changes. I mean, well, I came away from watching McCarthy with the idea that couple of things. That it was very evident that the Vikings coaching staff has worked hard with him on his drop and set. His footwork was cleaner. His balance was cleaner, especially in the play-action pass game, but also in the quick game dropbacks. He was comfortable. He was decisive. There was no hesitation. He looked to me like a different player than I watched at Michigan, because I got to tell you, his tape in Michigan was not great, and I spoke to a number of coaches who told me, hey, I thought he was a third-round pick. So, that's where the value of coaching comes in, and Kevin O'Connell and his staff, they need to be commended because they're obviously doing a terrific job with him.
Let's go to Caleb Williams. You mentioned the Kmet throw. You mentioned the 3rd and 12. Obviously, it was 2 series, so it's not like there's some huge sample size. Was there anything else that you noticed? Because I guess I was really impressed by the play where he didn't run. He kind of bought some time, stepped up in the pocket, and just found a way to get the ball to a playmaker in space, and DeAndre Swift, who got a lot of yards.
Yeah, and see, again, that's a play. First of all, that was a design screen, so that was the play. So he just happened to be under pressure. So it looked great, and I'm not taking anything away from Williams. It was a phenomenal play because he was under pressure, and when you're under pressure, your mind starts to work a whole lot faster. So, but that was the play call. So, again, I noticed things that we know about him. He's got a very live, loose arm. His delivery's really compact. He can easily drive the football. I mean, he's just a really easy thrower of the football, and he controls it really well. It was, again, you saw, to me, that 3rd and 12 play was, to me, most indicative of what I would want to see. Others might feel differently. But that's what I would want to see. I'd want to see him sit in the pocket, stay late in the down without leaving the pocket, and work through the progressions and then make the necessary throw.
Well, he was in Buffalo, so what I would like to see is after the game, Caleb Williams drinking some Labatt Blue Lights with his new friends up there in Buffalo and living life to the power of we. Always enjoy it responsibly. I'm pretty sure Caleb Williams is 21. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Okay, Greg, what about Jayden Daniels? We haven't talked about Jayden Daniels at all. The throw that everybody saw was the one down the sideline. But what did you see from the Commanders' first-round pick?
He hardly played. I mean, I think he threw 3 balls, so he made that great throw. I mean, to be honest, with him, there was really nothing to really talk about because he did not really play very many snaps and hardly had any dropbacks. So he was a little different. I think the other 2 guys that I think are really worth talking about because they had meaningful snaps were Penix and Bo Nix. And Penix.
Because hold on a second, Greg. Because Drake May didn't play very much either, right?
No, he only played 7 snaps and only had 3 dropbacks. So he hardly, we may get a better feel. Of course, you're going to get to see Drake May this week because you'll be up in New England. But Penix, I think, threw 16 balls, and I think Nix threw over 20 balls. So at least you got a better feel for them working through a game.
Which, by the way, let me just say as an aside, I'm a little surprised that the Commanders and the Patriots didn't have Jayden Daniels and Drake May play more. They're the number 2 and number 3 picks. They're going to play at some point this year. I don't know why. I'm a little surprised they wouldn't have had those guys play more than they did. But let's get to Penix Jr. because the Falcons didn't really put any points on the board. I saw where Orlovsky said he thought Penix did a bunch of good things. What did you see, Greg?
Yeah, I did too. I mean, look, it's funny. You mentioned about setting up a quarterback for success. His first drop back to open the game was a basic 2-man NFL concept. It's what we call a snag, a flat concept to the boundary. It's a basic read. There's a flat route and a snag route, which is kind of a condensed curl route, basically, and it's an easy read, and he completed it. That's what you try to do to let a young quarterback. You do that in a regular season game too. You let him get a completion. You get a completion with a basic read. I thought his 3rd drop back presented a good learning play because the defense played a trap coverage. And even though he completed the pass, I thought watching the tape that he did not recognize that it was a trap coverage. So that's a good learning play. That's what you also want to see in the preseason, Ross. You want to have the quarterback, in a sense, make some mental mistakes so you can work through those. Because, look, Penix is not likely to be the week 1 starter, as we know, because of Kirk Cousins, but that's irrelevant. You want him to learn in the NFL to see things that maybe he didn't see very much, if at all, in college, and then he puts that in the back of his brain and goes, okay, now I understand that. I could see that. Now I need to understand what a key or an indicator might be from a defense to let me know that I might see something that is a little different or that I haven't really seen much before.
Anything else overall, Greg? You mentioned 2 specific plays. What did you have? One was a positive, the other one was a learning experience.
Yeah, I thought he also showed that he could work through a progression with timing. There was a play where he went from a tempoed boundary slant, which got taken away by the underneath linebacker, to a backside dig from the opposite side of the field. He made a couple of vertical throws that were good, fade-type throws, but we know he can do that. So that's a strength of his game. So that's not surprising. You don't see that throw and go, oh, my God, what a great ball, because he did that. That's his game. Then one of the other things you look for, which is not an X and O, Ross, is just the look of how they play. Do they look like they're playing fast? Do they look like everything is in a hurry? Or do they look comfortable? Do they look as if they're just playing the way they're supposed to play the position? Comfortable drop back, comfortable set, deliver the football. Penix looked like that. I thought he understood when he went to get to a check down. He just looked like a comfortable player.
Well, that's a really good sign. Because I've been around rookie quarterbacks that you could just tell that their head was absolutely spinning. And some of them, that's just early and they figure it out. And some of them really never do, Greg. It's just a little bit too much for them.
Whereas I thought Bo Nix, and I really like Bo Nix's tape, and I got a chance to talk to him through the draft process, and he's a terrific kid, but I thought he played a little fast. I thought he was very quick to break down in the pocket. Now, he made a couple of throws doing that, but my guess is that Sean Payton will work with him on that, because we know, look, every coach, every offensive coach wants the play to be played within structure. That's why they design route concepts and route combinations, so the quarterback can hit his back foot, either hit the primary or work through a progression and deliver the football. They do not want the quarterback to move, and you know this, we've discussed this, about how offensive linemen don't like that at all, when the quarterback moves when he doesn't need to move. And I thought Nix played a little fast at times. He didn't really settle himself in the pocket on several dropbacks, but it had the feel of a first game. Again, what I'm saying now is not a knock on Bo Nix. I hope people understand that. It's his first NFL game. So, you work through this. You almost want to see some things that you have to work on. Look, you were in many training camps, Ross. That's what coaches want. They want to be able to work on things with players, so that, because you don't want to get stuck week 1, week 2, where, oh my God, we just got killed because, we didn't work on something. You want to be able to work on things. So none of this is a knock on Bo Nix.
I should have asked this before we started, Greg, just out of curiosity. Obviously, just to peel back the curtain a little bit because of travel, Greg and I are recording this on Tuesday. Did you get a chance to see Joe Milton or Rattler or any of those other guys yet, or will that be over the next couple of days?
No, because we're doing this earlier in the week, and I have not a chance to see Milton or Rattler. I heard Milton made a couple of throws. Again, it comes down to the same thing. We know what Milton can do throwing a football. The question is, and you're not going to get a great feel for this in the preseason, and he's not likely to be the starter anyway, but is what he can do beyond that. Because he's obviously a very physically gifted guy. Just like Rattler, I didn't get to yet because, I know he's not going to be the starting quarterback. Right. I'll get to them. I hope that some of these guys play a little more so I have a little more volume to look at. But, that may or may not happen. We don't know. There's only 3 preseason games now.
Yeah, I agree. Fantastic stuff, Greg. Absolutely loved it. You're the only one that I've heard say anything even a little bit critical of Bo Nix. Look, his stats were good. They moved the ball. They scored. But you're going by what the tape showed. I love that. I love that part of
and
it.
he only,
Nobody else.
keep in mind, he had 15 completions for only 125 yards. So, I mean, again, there's nothing wrong with that. He was 15 for 21. That's, perfectly fine. It's his first game. But, I mean, I thought he left some potential throws on the field because he moved a little too quick, and that's why the yardage wasn't very high.
Check him out on social media. He is the man, always has been, always will be, at Greg Cosell, the NFL Films legend. Already looking forward to next week. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Ross.
Greg is so good. He said like 3 or 4 things there that I haven't seen anybody else say. That's why we have the NFL Films legend every day. He hasn't been doing this since 1864, but Smirnoff has. They got a long history going all the way back to 1864. The brand is all about igniting the collective. When it comes to the NFL, we do game days, as Smirnoff helps bring fans together to cheer on their favorite team. By the way, I was talking to my wife about Smirnoff. She's a big fan, always has been, which was awesome. She was so excited. We got a care package. Anyway, I'll tell you guys about that some other time. Grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer and head to Smirnoff.com to find recipes of delicious cocktails perfect for game day. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please do not share with anyone under legal drinking age.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, the Jets' edge rusher Haason Reddick, he has formally requested a trade, and the Jets shortly after made a statement saying they will not trade him and they will continue to fine him.
Right, so this is a mess, obviously, and at this point, it's pretty clear there was a miscommunication, right? When you hear from people that clearly are getting the information from Reddick's camp, they say that the Jets promised they would give him a new deal. When you hear from people that are clearly getting the information from the Jets camp, they say they were told he'd be willing to play this year out on his original contract. So somebody's lying, or there was some type of miscommunication. The only thing I would say about that is it makes absolutely no sense that he would play out the final year of his deal for the Jets. If he wasn't willing to do that in Philadelphia, where he's from, where they have a really good team, why would he be willing to do that with the Jets? So I don't know about the miscommunication. I don't know who's lying or not, or maybe it's just, like I said, they're not on the same page. But logically, it makes absolutely no sense for him to be wanting to play for the Jets on the same contract.
Some other trade news, the Browns, they trade for center Nick Harris. They get him back from Seattle with a late-round pick swap.
By the way, I don't think I can ever remember a guy actually requesting a trade before he ever showed up for the team that traded for him. I mean, that's a new one. That's pretty funny. As for Nick Harris, so what's interesting there is, as a free agent, he signed out in Seattle. So the Browns drafted, or they had a second-year kid, I think, Luke Whippler from Ohio State. He was going to be the backup center. Well, he got hurt. And so now the Browns feel like, oh, wow, we need a backup center. So they know Nick Harris can do it. And Seattle just signed Connor Williams. So Seattle doesn't need Nick Harris anymore. So it worked out.
And then we're going to stick on the offensive line in the AFC North. Rookie first-round pick for the Bengals, Amarius Mims. He suffered a pec strain, and he is going to miss some time.
Right, so the good news is that Mims was not expected to play at the start of this year anyway. He got hurt a bunch at Georgia, so this is now a legitimate concern about him being injury-prone. You have to say that. And because he didn't play very much at Georgia, the thought process was he'd be behind Trent Brown for a year or most of the year, whatever, and then take over in 2025, and maybe the Bengals would have their tackles in Orlando Brown and Amarius Mims. What's really, so the good part is he's not supposed to play anyway. The bad part is because he didn't play that much at Georgia and he's relatively inexperienced, he really needs these reps. He really badly needs these reps and to be out there. And so him missing these is going to really slow down his development, which is a bummer.
And we missed this on Monday, Ross, but what were your thoughts about 5 different Indianapolis Colts players there wearing Guardian caps in their first preseason game?
So, two things are interesting to me about that, right? Number one is, they did the science and the math, and the Guardian cap, let's just say it reduces the impact by 20%. And so if you hit somebody and they're wearing a Guardian cap too, those forces compound, and it's like it reduces the collision by like 40%, right? What I always wonder is, like, okay, so where does it end? Why don't they put a second Guardian cap on? Does that give you 40%? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to do there. The other thing is, Jack, there's 6 helmets. Judy Batista said this when she was on the show, that have tested out better than wearing the Guardian cap. So I would think guys would just start to use the better helmets than wearing the Guardian caps pretty soon. Anyway, looking forward to today's Fantasy Feast. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. You want to get into the best ball draft? That's a great way to do it. Get a story for anybody. myfrontpagestory.com. Send it to me, ross@rosstucker.com. Love backofficescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.